And we're live. I don't know how many people are in the queue. We haven't got any comments yet, but I've asked for mods to join us. But welcome, everybody. Welcome M to the show. He's never been on a live stream before, so please do be kind and gentle. We want to make him feel as comfortable as possible. Welcome, M.
Nice to meet you. Hey, nice to have me. Nice for you to have me on the live stream. I really do appreciate that. And hope everyone is safe. Hope everyone is washing their fucking hands. Sorry, I swear a lot, but I hope everyone is just taking precautions and
It's all good.
is doing well. Yeah.
We're all good with swearing on this channel. I mean, all my videos get demonetized anyway, so it doesn't matter. But how are you doing? Every single person that I've had on onto my live streams, I've always asked, because we're of the current situation that we're in, how are you doing in isolation? How are things at home? I mean, for reasons to do with like you being closeted and living with family, we can't really show your face or use your actual name. So do you want to just share with us how you're feeling in isolation? And maybe give a brief introduction of who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Okay, I'd like to start with the introduction first. I'm a gay ex-Muslim atheist from South Africa. I come from a Salafi background. I left the religion 6 years ago in 2014. It wasn't because of my sexuality, rather because of science. But yeah, I haven't been doing much since. I've only recently started with the account Shmariana Shmande, as you might know me as, if you do follow me. But yeah, my isolation is okay. Of course, it does get to you at certain instances, particularly when you are closeted, when you still have to listen to certain rules, you still have to obey certain norms in your house. But yeah, other than that, it's fine. We are all safe. My family is pretty chill, though. They are liberal, which is always good.
That's good.
Yeah, and they increasingly liberal as the years go by, and I'm super grateful for that. So it's not overwhelming, but it's it can get like that at a few times when you're living in a full house.
Are you worried at all with Ramadan coming up?
Not particularly. I think because I was such a good actor for most of my life, of course, being gay, and you have to you you adopt certain traits and you know how to hide certain things. So I'm fine with that. I don't really have any reservations about that.
Fair enough. Like all of us closeted ex-Muslims had to go through this period of like hiding food and snacking in the middle of the
Yeah,
day because you weren't actually fasting. But yeah,
yeah,
it's good to hear that you're doing well and you're not too uncomfortable in your own home. I have spoken to quite a few ex-Muslims who are closeted, who aren't having such a great time. So this is actually a really good outlet for them to be able to have content to watch and people who can relate to them to a certain extent.
yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely blessed in the sense that I have a place of my own and I don't have to worry about that. But people are definitely suffering a lot harder, and I truly wish them the best. But we're going to move on to the topic of shunning before we move on to the It's Not a Choice campaign, which is run by the ex-Muslims of South Africa. But EXMNA and also the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain is running the Shunning is Torture campaign. There are a bunch of hashtags listed in the video description. Feel free to use them to share your story on whatever social media platform that you would like, be that Twitter, Instagram, your own YouTube videos. But do you have any personal experience with shunning? You are also, part of the LGBT label. As well as an ex-Muslim. So, I mean, you're closeted. So is there any kind of shunning that you've experienced? Are you scared of the type of shunning that you could possibly face? What is your story?
So I'm currently living in a community that is predominantly Sunni Muslims, and it's a highly conservative community, and I am out to some of my closest friends as both gay as an atheist as well. But
Mhm.
there still exists that fear that in the blink of an eye something could change, and it is traumatic to have to go to bed every night knowing that, hey, you know what, if I wake up in the morning and something happens, my life is going to change drastically. Uh, I think on the topic of shunning, I personally haven't felt that. Most of the people who I have actually articulated about my sexuality and my um, me being an atheist, they've generally accepted it. There hasn't been too much trauma regarding that, but it's just the prospect of having to one day deal with not being able to have a relationship with parents, for example. It plays on my mind a lot. It's
Mhm.
something I spent years and years trying to make peace with in my head. That, you know what, there's going to come a time when you need to step out, when you need to speak out, and things are not going to go as planned. And it is an incredible mental strain to bear.
It really is.
Yeah,
I mean, there's quite a few examples, and I don't want to name them because it's not my story to tell. But there's quite a few people that I've been talking to that you probably are aware of, like you know these people. We are all part of the same community, and we all kind of
yeah,
know each other. But there is quite a few people that I've spoken to who are in that situation of like trying to choose between keeping their family and being stuck in those values, and breaking free and being able to live their own lives. And I think it is a really, really tough decision to make. I mean, for me, it was a really, really tough thing that I'm still
yeah,
going through. So it will never be easy because the family as a unit as well within like a Muslim community is so highly revered, especially well,
yeah.
especially for women, but also for men. Like family is like the thing that comes first. It comes before everything else. Um,
I do. I would like to also add that a lot of my Muslim friends who still identify as both
mhm,
would much rather go ahead and marry a woman, would much rather go ahead and have kids and pretend that everything is fine instead of having to step out and possibly face just your life turning to shit, for lack of a better word. But yeah, it does play on your head a lot, and I have a lot of mental health issues as a result of that,
mhm,
anxiety being one of them.
mhm.
And you tend to, when you're in that headspace of, okay, I am now questioning my sexuality, I'm questioning my faith, and I'm not feeling okay in my own body, and you tend to find habits, whether it's smoking, drinking, drugs, and it's the only way you can process certain things, and
Mhm.
it's really difficult to overcome. But I think what I would say is to anyone who is listening, who is going through this, is take a time out for yourself, try and internalize, try and introspect, try and find your own identity. Do not try and become something else for the sake of something else. Nothing is more important than actually being yourself. And I do think that, yes, shunning is a reality, but your life and your happiness should come before anyone else's, especially
Uh,
if you
I
are in
think
such
that
a precarious
that's
position.
yeah. I think that the personal happiness and the right to be individually happy is really undervalued in our societies and in our communities. Um, like I never even considered that as a thing. For me, it was just like, for me, honesty was something, personal honesty, honesty within myself was the thing that I valued the most. Like I can't continue to believe this. It just can't. It doesn't
Yeah,
line up with what I believe to be true. But for me, personal happiness as something that I deserve to have is still something that I really, really struggle with because it's so undervalued in our communities. Um, um,
absolutely agreed there. I think you actually need to look at you, the individual, over what the society
yeah.
tells you to want,
Mm,
what your society tells you to be. You owe that to yourself, particularly if you know your own truth. You know you. you shouldn't choke down on that.
Yeah. Okay. Before we move on to the next topic, we do have a question from Ishtiaq Hussein. He's asking, what percentage of the population in your part of Africa is Muslim?
Oh, okay. I don't have specific numbers, but there is a large contingent of Muslims, particularly Sunni Muslims, and they typically spread out throughout the country. So in each province there'll be a certain concentration of Muslims, and a lot of it is also the way it's structured is down to the apartheid laws before 1994,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of the same ethnic and racial backgrounds and racial groups were bunched up together. So you have the Muslim population from Southeast Asia in one area, and you have Muslims who are Malay, Muslims who are Arab, Muslims later Arab who essentially immigrate here. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's how everything is structured. So I do think that the overall population isn't an overwhelming amount, but it may come across that way because we exist in these communities that are, for one, ultra conservative, but also it's a bubble, and a lot of people fail to break out of that bubble.
Okay. Um, yeah, what I've noticed about Muslim communities, I mean, even where I live, I live in the UK, I live in a Western country. I'm like inheriting your accent. I don't. Um, Even though I live in a Western country, what I've noticed is that Muslims do tend to kind of gather together in a community.
Yeah,
Like we have a massive community in Wembley, where I grew up. There's a massive community in Northwest London. There's a massive community in East London, and everyone kind of knows everybody. You have the same kind of thing going on in Bradford and
yeah,
other cities around the UK. So it's just like I think part of it has to do with this need to feel connected to back home.
yes,
So
yes,
that's part of it, and the other part of it is that they want to stay away from everyone else because everyone else is impure in some kind of way. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but
I would say that when you are so far removed from
mm,
your religion or from your origins, and I'd say most in South Africa are fourth, third generation immigrants, um, you know, and when you are so far removed from that culture, whether it's in India or Pakistan, and in my personal experience, you you look for that. You need a sense of community. You need a sense of belonging, and it's not just religion. It's particularly in South Africa. It's got a lot to do with race. So
mhm.
intermingling has been a slow process, and there is still tension, and I do think there will still be tension for that exact
I'm
reason is that we find our identity in groups.
I'm really, really hoping that integration becomes a little easier. I know that integration in the US for Muslims is a little easier.
Yeah,
I just hope in the UK and in other countries it becomes easier as well. Just because uh, it's just nice when everybody knows everybody, you know?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I really, really do want to bring on some, liberal Muslims. I want to bring on so that they can talk and they can share their side and their views because I think they're valid because Muslims aren't monolithic. And I think that a lot of people who follow me and on this channel and follow me on my Twitter, I think they have a very negative perception of Muslims in general, even though we might not be highlighting that, which is why I
yeah,
always try to make it very, very clear that I'm not talking about every single Muslim. I'm talking about a specific type of Muslim, or I'm talking about Islam. So, um, yeah,
yeah.
I
Agreed on that. Wholeheartedly agree on that. I do think that there is a space for moderates and liberals
mm,
and progressive Muslims, and the biggest thing that I think they can do is not be afraid to have conversations with skeptics, with free thinkers, with people who were in the faith, with actual
I
Muslim scholars.
I really,
Because,
really agree.
yeah,
But the problem is that I think right now it's very, very hard to build that bridge because they kind of because I reached out to a couple of brothers. I have a friend who was like, "Oh, you should join this Instagram live. They like answer questions about Islam and they're like very, very like liberal and things. You should check them out." And I reached out to them, and I really felt like they saw me as a threat. Like, oh, she just wants to
to bash
take us out
and
of content, when I just want to give them a platform, because whereas I might not fully agree because of how I was raised within Islam, I do want to understand where they're coming from and how they feel, because I think that that's the only avenue in which Islam can sort of modernize, and become as, like Christianity, like, so that
yeah.
nobody takes it as seriously as Christianity. um so yeah.
I'd
um
like to add to that, saying that it should also come from within Muslim groups,
mm,
in that there shouldn't be any sort of stigmas around talking about religion and essentially looking into your religion, because I know that in my personal experience is when you ask too many questions, you get told stop asking these questions,
mm,
and that it's a barrier that I think needs to be broken, and people they absolutely need to talk about the issues within the religion and within their culture,
I
because yeah,
sorry, God.
like you said, um, we aren't exactly the best people in their eyes to do this. And in a way, I can understand why with Islamophobia, I hate that word, with, sorry, correction, with anti-Muslim bigotry and, the rise of nationalism and white supremacy. And it's just this recoil of it's us against them. And they fail to distinguish that we aren't them a lot of the
Yeah.
times. Yeah,
Yeah, it is tricky. We're in a very bizarre time, I think, of extremes. And it's just something that I've never been comfortable with, is absolutes. But I mean, we're delving into a whole other topic.
yeah.
We do have another question that's kind of unrelated, but we'll deal with it quickly. Uh, is Muhammad's quote about no one superior to other is a weak or fabricated hadith? I don't know
Um,
exactly what you're referring to. If you can give us the quote or a link, that might be a bit better to work with. But I would like to move on to you talking about the "It's Not a Choice" campaign and which is related to free from hijab.
yeah.
We've talked about hijab many, 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 many times on this channel. So much so that I'm pretty sure everyone is sick of it. But you are doing this campaign through ex-Muslims of South Africa. So would you like to introduce everyone to ex-Muslims of South Africa, and also to this campaign?
So recently, we've actually changed our name from ex-Muslims of South Africa to Atheist Muslims of South Africa. The reason being, and we do get a lot of questions about this on Twitter, but the reason being is, even though we are atheists, even though we are agnostics, even though we are skeptics, even though we don't fit the mold of what a Muslim is,
Mhm.
our heritage and our culture and the communities we exist in are still Muslim, and we still hold a Muslim identity largely. A lot of us still live in Muslim communities,
Mhm.
so that's with regards to the name change. But yeah, the campaign, I think, came about, and this is something I personally have been wanting to start for a very long time, and it's been an effort. I think that a lot of people should be thankful for the support we've had. Firstly, I am thankful for the support we've had from you, from other organizations, from
Mhm.
other ex-Muslims. But the underlying message is that this whole narrative of the hijab being a choice, the niqab being a choice, is a flawed one. And a lot of the times it takes precedence over other voices because it exists in countries like the United States and in the UK, where people can actually talk about their experiences um, within religion. And for a lot of people who live there, it is a choice. The thing is, if it's they can choose to not wear hijab without being harassed, without being guilt tripped, without being threatened, um, without being threatened with violence, without being punished. And this is something that we take issue with because what your religion has ordained, what your God Allah has ordained for you is to cover yourself.
Mm.
There is no other truth. If you believe Islam is the one true religion, if you believe Allah is the only God, if you believe that Muhammad is the last messenger, then you should take that command seriously, and it's not taken seriously. And these people who, I mean, well intentioned, I do think a lot of them are well intentioned and say, you know what, it's empowering. But to the majority who live in Islamic countries, to the majority of people in general, of women in general, of Muslim women, it isn't a choice. And it's taken up far too much space on social media.
I
There's,
think
yeah,
the narrative is certainly one-sided, especially here in the West. Um, I mean, in Muslim countries, it's completely one-sided. They don't have a choice. But when we talk about the West and its hand in perpetuating this idea that wearing the hijab is a choice or that it's a feminist symbol and all of that stuff, the narrative is extremely one-sided, and anyone who says otherwise is kind of you're a
yeah, like
racist, you hate
who are you?
everybody.
Yeah, you're Islamophobic.
Yeah.
You don't get to tell me how to wear my hijab,
Mm,
and I agree with that. But what we are doing is not telling you how to wear your hijab. If you feel like it's a choice for you, if it's a choice between eating at McDonald's or eating at Nando's,
mm,
and it's that easy to make, then yes, it's a choice for you. But for women, it's wear it or abuse, wear it or burn in hell for eternity, wear it and disappoint your parents, wear it and disappoint your communities. And those women do not have a voice. For them, it's a lot of the times inconceivable for them to actually be speaking out.
yeah.
And with this campaign having kicked off, I've been in contact with many who actually don't want to reveal, they don't actually want to say what their name is. They don't want to even be tagged in the posts because they are so afraid of just saying, you know what, it's not a choice.
I mean, I don't blame them because the kind of backlash that myself and so many others get, I mean, if we're talking about Noon, Nuria Benson, we're talking about Zara K, we're talking about anyone and everyone who does posts like this, Halima Salat, you
Yeah,
know, I don't blame them for not wanting to show their faces and, support the movement because the criticism can be a lot. And if you're not thick-skinned, it can have a really, really severe impact on you. I mean, I've caused several stirs of my own. Everyone is aware of this. I'm just the troublemaker of the entire community. But it really, if you don't know how to deal with it and you are very sensitive to that kind of thing, it can be very, very detrimental. So, on the one hand, it's so important for, like, I started a thread and I've yet to see one post of someone posting their face or posting a picture of them without hijab. I mean, support, there's, likes and retweets and all of that stuff. But what I really want to see is people just celebrating their own beauty. And I think that a lot of women, even after taking off their hijab, they still don't do that because they don't have that kind of, I think they
they
sort
haven't
of,
learned. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't
they,
think they've learned
and it
to.
and I understand it because I went through it for a long time because I felt like, oh, there is no value to me loving my own body, sort of thing. And it's been a very recent discovery and experimentation for me to, you know, find where the line of where I'm comfortable and what I like wearing, and a lot of my friends have been very instrumental in encouraging me and being like, no, you look fine, go. And they'll, like, any ridiculous idea I have, they'll be like, yeah, do it. And I'll do it because the encouragement is there. It's not necessarily peer pressure because it's usually my idea, but it's just this nervousness that comes with it, because we're not used to valuing our beauty as women. We're so used to covering it up, and being told that this is shameful to show the world and that you shouldn't have pride in this kind of thing. Um, so I would be interested to just know what you think about that.
Yes, you raise a very good point about value, and I do think that the hijab is often thought of as just a garment,
Mm,
and it's not. It's not. It shifts your entire lifestyle. It's what it represents is just bigger than a piece of cloth. It's the way you interact with people, the way you interact with men, the way you interact with women, and also the way you interact with your own identity. Because
Hmm.
I cannot personally say, because I am, of course, a gay man, I don't know. But I can relate in the sense of homosexuality being something imposed on you, and you have to come to accept that. And a lot of women are just resigned to that fate, to be
Hmm.
subservient to their husbands, to, you know, with, especially when the Quran and the Hadith gives the laws that you have to abide by.
Hmm.
That is something that is a shackle. It's not empowering in my eyes. Of course, if you think that it's empowering for you, that's up to you. But it essentially just makes you a number. If when you don't have a choice in the matter. You are born into a Muslim family. You are born a woman into a Muslim family, and
Hmm.
this is imposed on you from the time you are a very young child. And I do think that is unfair, and the expectation with regards of women um, in relation to their male counterparts is just
Yeah.
for me it is truly ridiculous.
I mean, speaking as a woman, and you're right, the hijab, I think a lot of people do view the hijab as just a piece of clothing, but there's so many things attached to it because you're constantly told that you have to behave in a certain way, you have to represent your family or your religion in a certain way. You know, you can't speak loudly, you can't be yourself. Like me, for example, I was always a quiet child, but I think the reason I was quiet was because I had to be. Now I'm quite boisterous and loud, and I don't care what other people think. But it really really does condition you to be a certain way. It's kind of, it's not just a physical covering, it's also a psychological and personality covering, actually, because they kind of try to make you this perfect uh, representation Muslimah sort of thing. um, so yeah, we have Zara K in the chat if you wanted to say hi. um,
Uh, Yeah, I'd also like to say thank you to Sarah for her help. It's been she's been instrumental, and I can't say thank you enough. I've been saying thank you until I'm blue in the face, but I genuinely do mean it, and not just Sarah, but everyone else who bothered to reach out, who bothered to post, who bothered to tag, who bothered to retweet and like.
mhm.
It is important to have voices like Sarah, but it's also important to have everyone's voice and unity amongst the greater community to actually break in the mainstream narrative.
Yeah, I the thing that bothers me the most is that a lot of the time, like I have Muslim friends who, you know, they'll drink with me and they're not very practicing, or they're Shias or Ahmadis, and they just have a different interpretation of Islam or whatever. And they'll like dance with me, they'll drink with me, they'll just, you know. And I have one friend who's quite sheltered and who's very reluctant, but she wants to try things. And it's shocking to me how they change the moment that their Muslim friends sort of come into the picture, and they'll act a different way, but how much more comfortable they are with me because they know that I'm not going to sit there and judge the hell out of them. And so many Muslim women have reached out to me through Twitter, through email, through Instagram as well, to just ask me like, hey, I don't agree with everything you say about Islam, but I really don't like the hijab, and I don't know how to, you know, I don't know how to take it off. I, you know, have I don't really want to out them, but I have members from my past that have reached out to me, and they're like, "Hey, I don't really know how to deal with this. Like, I don't want to be an ex-Muslim, but you know, what should I do? What are the steps? How do I try to like live a slightly more liberal and looser kind of life?" And it's really really difficult. Like even not just like leaving. Like I feel like leaving is kind of an extreme, but there are people out there who just want to flatten out the kind of Muslim they are. Like they don't want to be as extreme as like a Salafi interpretation. And even that is difficult if your family is so um, sort of draconian in the way that their interpretation of Islam is.
Yeah, definitely. It is so difficult. I think for women to speak out, and again, I draw the parallel of being gay, and I think that's also why I'm so taken by the subject, because you are essentially told to suppress your sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
You are not allowed to talk about certain things. You are not allowed to behave in a certain way, and you are constantly looking for this middle ground when deep down inside, okay, you know that if you are a Sunni Muslim and you are brought up Salafi, in my experience, you know that there is no common ground. It's black and white. It is there. It is law. It is enforced. And
And
I
it
do
can't be
think
changed. No bid'ah.
absolutely, absolutely, and that's the thing when you go around making claims like, oh, the hijab is a choice, and and you try and say, no, Allah didn't say that, but He said that, so it can try and suit your own narrative and agenda. Yes, you may be coming from a good place. Yes, you may want to help other Muslim women who are struggling and who you can empathize with, but that
Mm-hmm.
is not going to change what the religion says. And I do think that it is changing slightly. I don't know if you have noticed it, that more and more people are willing to almost accept a diluted version of Islam. And I don't personally like. I won't champion the reform movement, but I'm not going to fight it. If it does create a safe space for women without putting down other women who are practicing a more conservative Islam, which is
I
in
mean,
my mind the authentic Islam,
if the
then yes,
reformists take over the extreme factions, I'm happy.
yeah, yeah,
I think that the level of harm that they're capable of is so much less than, and this is kind of what we were saying off camera as well. I feel like the Salafi ex-Muslim experience is so much different to other kinds of ex-Muslims. Um,
absolutely.
because I don't know, it's just so much harder. It's just so much harder to move around, and especially as a woman. Like for me, even though I knew it was all false, there was still like I was still 50-50 on whether or not I should just get married, have a bunch of kids, and then just die one day. Because it's
Yeah.
so difficult to take that step and be like, no, you know what, I'm gonna live my own life. Which may sound ridiculous, but it really is tough.
Yes, yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, that you would rather be resigned to your fate
Mm,
than try and actually change your circumstance. And that is also another angle of the graphics and the way those campaign graphics were created, in that the hijab to the outside world is just this cloth. And
mm,
you, as a woman, deal with abuse on the daily. And I wanted to flip it, where everything you go through is written on your face. And you want different things. You want to take off the hijab and feel the wind in your hair. You want to be able to swim without uh, having an entire cloak over you.
yeah.
You have these needs, you have these wants, you want to express yourself, but there is no there is no choice for you but to wear the hijab and abide by these laws.
Mm. So to kind of end this topic, do you want to just briefly talk about the hashtag and the kinds of things that you or the organization, so X_Africa on Twitter, would like to see in terms of how people use the hashtag?
Yes, so the hashtag "it is not a choice" is also going to be used in conjunction with "free from hijab." So it's also not just limited to ex-Muslim women who want to reach out to tell a story. We want Muslim women to tell us how they feel, and they can do so whether it's just through tweeting and tagging. They can actually contact us directly and do a write up about what they have been through, and we will put the story out there, and just to show that your words might inspire someone else to speak up. And by doing so, particularly with graphics and having a picture, which is something that can sit in your head. It's something that you remember. It's something that you're likely to save, and you might not find any use for it. But if someone 5 years down the line finds it and is like, hey, you know what? Here's a Muslim woman who is going through a real tough time, trying to speak up, trying to tell the world her story, and that resonates with you, you will also want to tell the world your story. And it works both ways because you want it to be a change in public perception of what the hijab is, and that you want to shift the narrative from it is a choice to no, it is in fact not a choice,
Hmm.
to and also have a personal impact on women who think, wait, is this really a choice? If you read something that you have been through, you are more likely to sit and try and figure out whether or not you are being true to yourself, true to your own needs. But yeah, with regards to the campaign, it will be ongoing.
Hmm.
I will, we will be, I cook up the graphics, so I say I a lot. But yeah, we will be going with this campaign, running with this campaign for the foreseeable future. We want women to actually contact us. We want to reach out to other women, and we want to tell their story. We want to tell their story to the world because a lot of the
Yeah.
times they cannot do that themselves. And every
Well,
retweet is invaluable.
this is kind of why I told you that Instagram might be useful for that.
Yeah,
Because then you can put it in a visual form, sort of like Leaving Islam. The account Leaving Islam does similar things, where they'll put a sort of text format into an image.
yeah,
Um, but what I wanted to add to what you were saying is, those of you who may be watching who are not from a Muslim background, who are skeptics, or, who don't stand for hijab, or, don't believe hijab is a choice. What I would say is that you also use the hashtag to ally with this cause. To sort of put yourself in the shoes of someone who never had a choice to express themselves, never had a choice to, not just in terms of clothing, but also in terms of personality, in terms of thought, like critical thinking, not a thing, you know. I think that it's really, really important that we don't just isolate this movement or any of the movements that we start just to ex-Muslims,
absolutely.
because it is definitely a bigger thing than that. And I think that when we have a wider support within the skeptic community, it will encourage others who are afraid to talk about it to slowly come out, and it will become normalized. So I would really, really, really encourage that you retweet, you talk about what you think about the hijab, you talk about how you would feel in such an environment. You share these live streams, you clip them, you send them about, you mirror them. Like, I don't really care. I'm not precious over my work. So I think that that's really, really important. And I would, from someone who is an ex-Muslim and who has gone through this personal struggle, I would really, really appreciate it. I just don't see it enough. I would just love to see more of it.
And I also think that we have to understand why these women are apprehensive. So while we are trying to affect change, it's also, I don't think we can pull people out of the hijab. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I think that it needs to come from within. And if someone sees one of these graphics, if someone sees one of those tweets, and I actually want them to go back to the source of this. I want them to go back to the Quran. I want them to go back to the Hadith and try and understand why we are taking the stance we are taking, and try to understand that from a Muslim perspective that we actually care about these women. We see them in our community. It's our mothers. I'm speaking from a male perspective. Our mothers, our sisters, your female relatives who you can see are drowning in the hijab, but do not for 1 second dare to actually challenge it.
Yeah. It it's tough because I've been in that situation where I've tried to explain it to a family member, and Like I've had way more serious discussions since leaving my family. You know, I've talked about my mental health issues with close friends. I've talked about like suicidal ideation. I've talked about so many things on a personal level with people, and I've always had the comfort of knowing that this person is not going to freak out. But even the smallest thing with, at least with my family, and maybe this is something you can relate to, with the smallest thing, like I think the first thing that I said to my family is that, oh, I think my father needs psychological help. Like that's all I said, and the whole
Yeah,
family freaked out. Like the whole like, no, he doesn't need anything. Like he's just a bit sad. Like that's it. And it's clearly not just that. Like there's clearly something else going on there, and it needs to be dealt with. um, I think that like the reluctance to accept help from an outside source that is not Islamic, and also outside the family, this concept of like
yeah,
shame if they ask for help, is really, really horrible. And I just wish that more people talked about it. It's not talked about enough.
yeah. I do think, in particular, with mental illnesses, and
Mm,
especially as a byproduct of your religious upbringing
mm,
and traumas, when you are taken to Muslim psychologists, it doesn't help. And I've had countless number of people tell me, I told my mother that I've been going through a depression. They saw that I was depressed, and the first thing they do is tell you, you need to pray. You um,
yeah.
and the next, yeah, and it's, I mean, again, I don't think that it's malicious. I really think that they are trying to help you, the parents would try to help. But like you said, it's imperative that you look around and
Mm.
you ask for help, and you also take help from anyone who is willing to help you. It's not about religion when the cost is your freedom and the cost is your sanity.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure what your circumstance was in terms of that, but what I experienced was definitely, perhaps it didn't start off as malicious, but it did become malicious.
Yeah,
So with this whole like sabr, just be patient and things will improve, when you know things were just not going to improve because nothing was being handled. And it's just like, oh, just keep praying, it will be over one day. And every single time they said that to me, I would think, well, is it going to be when I die? Like, what are you telling me? um, and then, like after I reported my father and I left the house, there were a lot of exorcisms that I went through. Like, oh, you've been taken over
oh
by
wow,
jinn. Like you're having all these ideas, ideas that you're not meant to have, sort of thing. And then eventually, when I fully left my family, when I was fully disowned, I got a lot of hate comments from them, talking about how, oh, you're mental, you went to counseling. And it's just like a very shameful thing in their eyes to like be on medication, or try to take
yeah.
responsibility for your mental health, which is something that definitely needs to be addressed, and I just don't know why it isn't.
Yeah, agreed. Especially on how the average Muslim would deal with something like depression and something like just even questioning your religion. People think you possess, like you said. They think you have jinns who are telling you to do this, and they want to take you to the nearest mosque to have them prayed out of you. And that is, I, I would still like to believe that your parents or your family, their actions at that stage, whilst you are still Muslim, before you actually step out, um, are sincere. I do think that their Muslim identity is such an integral part of their character and their upbringing that they would do everything within their power, within Islam. And
um I don't
like,
know. I think
yeah,
that I mean, I'm very reluctant to be that forgiving, because they were
yeah,
very, very caught up in their own kind of self-interest. Um, and I don't know, maybe that's just my way of dealing with it. I'm not entirely sure.
I,
But I'm also very, very reluctant to sort of victimize adults who, you know,
yeah,
are capable of feeling emotions. Um,
yeah. Being
I'm
capable
very,
of
very
critical
reluctant
thought.
to do that because, I mean, even the way that they treated my younger siblings, and the way that they would always look at us as if we were a burden, it just became so like, well, if you don't care, stop coming around. Like, why are you pretending? Like, it just, I don't know. I really don't want to talk about it because it's just sad. Um,
No, yeah, look, it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing for
mm,
many to experience. And again, of course, being the eldest child, I do think I had to bear the brunt of
mm,
everything. And
same.
maybe my experience growing up with my family is different because as time went by, things have become less pressing, and things have become a lot more lenient.
Mm,
So I just think I'm trying to be optimistic, maybe, and I'm not right, you're not wrong. It's
yeah.
it's I think it's different for each family.
I mean, I kind of went through the same thing because I'm also the oldest child. I'm also the oldest granddaughter. Um, but I just like all I remember is making so many excuses because like there's a narration about, not thinking evil of people and giving them
Yeah,
like 32 excuses or whatever. I can't remember the exact number, but something dumb like that. Um, but I remember giving them excuse after excuse after excuse, like they're good intentioned, they're your family, they're taking care of you, but they're just, I don't know. I think at the end of it, what really broke me was that they were so invested in their own self-interest that I couldn't forgive that. Because they were literally willing to risk the health, well-being, and lives of myself and my siblings because they didn't want to deal with their awful, well, my father, you know.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
I do think you're right in that regard. In that everything they do, whether or not it's sincere, whether or not it's malicious, is for their religion.
yeah,
So if you take that standpoint, it's true to their own character. They trying to
mm,
look after themselves. But on a whole, I do completely disagree with that. That I do think you should be able to separate how you treat someone because they're human with how you treat them because you are Muslim.
mm.
How you see someone because
But
you are
I would
Muslim.
like to say, I would like to say that I do like the way you think. I think I definitely would have fewer issues if I was able to think that optimistically. Um, I just like I can't rationalize it in that way.
I
Um,
Yeah, sorry, I just want to say I also think I am the exception to the rule, of course.
mm,
Yes, I am still in the closet, but um, and when I was younger, I would think that my life is gonna end. I'm gonna fucking get kicked to the curb. I'm gonna become homeless. I'll probably
mm,
die in a ditch somewhere. And I can laugh about it now, but that's what I thought. And as a child, that is what you think. But also as an
yeah.
adult, you can realize what is you can realize that each family would react differently. And again, I'll just reiterate that I think my situation would be the exception
Hmm.
to the rule. And there's a lot of people who suffer, and by no means should we discredit and invalidate that because that
No,
is
of course
it's
not. But
yeah
I'm glad. I really, really am glad that your situation is better because honestly, no one deserves to go through that. It's just such a horrible thing to go through. Um,
yeah it's insane. It's insane, and I do think when you are a child, when you are growing up, you are also naive, and you also believe things a lot more easier. You don't tend to look at the causes of certain behaviors, and
mm,
I'm glad I've also personally changed my mindset with regards to that.
that's good. So I think we've dealt with the campaign. Uh,
Yeah,
if anyone has any questions for M or for Shmariana Shmande, um,
love that name.
please do feel free to ask questions in the chat. We'll throw them up on the screen. They don't have to be about Islam, they can be about anything. Just so that we can keep the conversation going, because I'm having a good time, and as long as you're comfortable as well, and you haven't got
Yeah.
anywhere to run to.
No, I'm good. I did also want to touch on another thing of the abuse that came up after this whole "It Is Not a Choice" campaign. I know there were a few women who were just so reluctant and so over it, because the minute you say something about anything related to Islam, you get attacked. And a lot of people would now know, if they watch this, that I am a man, because a lot of few strangers who don't interact with me uh, always predominantly are these Muslim apologist types who are very, very combative. They are, I think, they're condescending, and I do think they are more inclined to be that way because you
Mm.
present yourself as a woman, because you are a woman.
Mm.
And we actually spoke about this beforehand, in that it's a completely different experience when you are put
Yes,
as a
let's
man and
spill
when
the
you are
tea
put
on
as a woman.
Asadullah. I have my alcohol back there. Let's go. I'm ready.
Yeah, it's and you use Salah as an example, but you can also mention someone like Ali Dawah, for example,
Hmm. Yeah.
who who these men, I think, are not only superior to women, but they
Hmm.
think they are superior to other men, and they would probably be superior to Muhammad himself because they know everything about fucking religion.
Hmm.
You know? uh, and
They're very up themselves. They're very arrogant,
no, they do, and
entitled.
they are. They are very arrogant, and they go around with like a group of people, and it's particularly difficult, I think, for a woman to deal with it, because it's very easy for a man to talk down to a Muslim woman.
Hmm.
To an ex-Muslim woman, I think it's even worse, because then you were already this small little fragile thing, and when you speak out, it's suddenly, you know what, you are an emotional bitch. You are looking for attention. You just want fame and money. You just want
Oh,
sex. You just want, and it's inconceivable to them that a woman might actually be educated. If a woman might actually be um, stronger than them, and in the physical sense as well.
yeah.
It's just they do not look
I
further
think
than your profile picture.
I think many a Muslim man, both in person and on Twitter, has realized very quickly that they usually have their work cut out with me. Um, many a Muslim man has found
Yeah.
that I'm not a woman that can be easily trifled with. Like, I'm not just gonna walk away with my tail between my legs. I am gonna hold my position, and if they're gonna be condescending, I will be condescending back. If they're petty, I will be petty back. Um, so yeah, and I think you were also mentioning before that because you like on your Twitter, and because you have Ariana Grande as a profile, you have like the third person of her name as your username. Um, I think that puts you in a position of presenting as a woman, but like we all know now that you're a man. And how have you found that experience? I mean, we were talking about Asadullah before the live stream started. You can touch on that a little as an example, but how have you found that?
Uh, Sorry, I think I got most of that. I don't know if your mic was a bit weird, so it
I
was a
think
bit
I got
fuzzy.
okay.
Okay, now it's fine. I
Um,
don't know what you did, but it's fine. But yeah, if
okay.
I understand correctly, you asked because I am a man behind an account that actually presents as a woman, how do I find interacting with these sort of tropes, these archetypes?
Yeah.
Am I correct? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of the times when you interact with them, they already have an inherent sense of superiority um, from their religion, which they get because Islam is aggressively patriarchal, like all Abrahamic religions. And as a woman, you should know your place. As a woman, you should know how to speak to your male counterparts. As women, you should know how to behave around men. So the minute you step out, it is a license for retaliation, it is a license for harassment, it is a license for just unashamedly spewing vitriol and name calling, and it's disgusting. And the thing is, I personally am headstrong,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't mind when people do that, because if you are going to do that, and myself, Shmariana Shmande, is going to give you the same amount of shit back,
Mm-hmm.
it tends to piss them off a lot more, and
Yeah,
and
I'm
that's
all
and
for
that's
that.
the goal, and that's the
I think
goal.
I think fire with fire is a really good way to go about it.
Absolutely, and I would encourage more Muslims, and it was one of my mutual followers, Anya, who put that thread out on, when you search the greatest man,
Hmm.
Prophet Muhammad, which is up, and she went through this list of hadith, and she explained, okay, so in this verse he slept with a 9-year-old, he married her at 6. How is that the
Was that a
greatest man?
woman who posted that? I think they're
Yeah.
non-binary, so I'm not sure. Um,
Look, I'm assuming it's a woman. Forgive me.
okay.
Allah forgive me. Yeah. But yeah, it's just, and the thing is, she got so much hate for it. And I'm at a stage where I would actually encourage people that you're going to get hate anyway
Hmm.
if you are ex-Muslim. You already are sitting with a massive target on your back. And I wouldn't advise actively being antagonistic, but if you are going to be insulted, the best thing you can do is to stand your ground,
Hmm.
and you shouldn't be treated like that, and it's okay to stand up and say, you know what, fuck off, I'm not going to tolerate this shit.
Yeah.
And the more women do that, the more women who can't do that will see, okay, these are strong female characters who
I think
whom
that there definitely is a time and a place. I think generally most of my tweets are fun, lighthearted, informative, but when I think that every single woman has a license to be a bad bitch if she has an excuse to be one, you know?
absolutely,
Um,
absolutely,
so I think that, I mean, I just don't think, especially in such a public forum as Twitter, that if somebody is like talking smack to you and they are a public figure and they have a massive following, you have the right to fight fire with fire. You
absolutely. It's
I
it's an
completely
even playing
disagree
field.
with the notion of like treating that with any kind of decorum or
Yeah.
respect, because why should you?
Yes, and I often use the reference, if you don't get to throw shit at people and then
Hmm.
complain when I fling shit back at you.
Yeah.
If you are gonna go about being this type of character, if you want to be abrasive, if you want to be obnoxious, if you want to be
Mm.
aggressive, it's okay, do it. But when someone else does it to you, you do not get to sit on your high horse and claim any sort of superiority, and you you don't get to also, and I'll just go back to this because I actually forgot to mention it, is that
Mm.
these men almost always will shit on women's experiences.
Hmm.
I see it so often, and it's usually the same culprits, and I think they already know who they are. You
Hmm.
know, it's that group that it's a bunch of groupies who follow the
You could name
main
them and
tower
shame
man.
them. Fuck them. They're awful.
Yeah, so um, I don't think I will name them because there's so many. There's so many
Yeah, that's the true.
who, yeah, who piggyback and just start fighting for no fucking reason. It's someone who has a genuine, valid experience who's trying to voice her experience, and
Hmm.
you come there and you think it's your place to shut her up, you know,
Yeah. What
and
I
that
have noticed is that the only experiences that they will accept and even trophy is the positive ones, like the Muslims who are out there doing neuroscience or whatever. Those are the only
yes,
stories
yes,
that they will share. But everyone else's experience is invalid because it doesn't suit their narrative.
you're That's a fantastic point. In a conversation I actually had, if you can call it a conversation with Asadullah, um,
It's
it
just bitchy,
was
pissy bitch
little,
fighting. That's
yeah,
all he does. Um,
that's exactly what it does. And I think it was Little Devil who was talking through her experiences and actually giving proofs of how this relates to her religion, to
mhm,
Islam. And so she's not just saying stuff about the religion, and I think that's fair. It's fair to recognize when it is a product of your own doing. You know,
mhm.
if you are miserable on your own behalf. But for a lot of us, we don't risk that. We won't be in the position we are if it was our own doing. You know, there's a lot at stake. And when he was going at her and calling all sorts of things, I just asked him, like, why do you think it's okay to invalidate someone's experiences? Because Islam is not a feminist religion, as you know. And he responded by saying, "Oh, my wife is studying linguistics." And I'm like, "What's that got
That's
to do with
just
the
the
price of
thing.
eggs?"
Like, our anecdotes don't matter. Our anecdotes are purely anecdotal,
Absolutely,
but their anecdotes are valid. And it just strikes me as so hypocritical, and
it's a bullshit double standard.
it's bitchy.
It's a bullshit double standard,
It's
and
pure, like, what it reminds me of is like high school bitchiness. That's what it reminds me of. Like, you'll have like the preppy lot who are the popular kids or whatever, and they'll have, the high ground and whatever they say goes. And that's what it feels like to me. Like it's just pure like mean girls bitchiness. Um
and
and
that's yeah.
it
I
just
think you're
sucks.
absolutely correct. It's like you haven't outgrown your petulant 13-year-old self.
And
You
I also really,
sorry
really feel for Sophia, that she had to deal with that fucking homunculus, because um, first of all, he does not know how to hold a decent human conversation. I've never seen him hold one where he isn't being
now.
condescending, not once. And I've like browsed through his, blog page, Yakin Institute. I've browsed through some of his YouTube videos. I've watched the secular jihadist conversation. I've had conversations with him myself. I've seen conversations with
Yeah,
others. He is completely incapable of not being condescending and arrogant and rude. Um, and it
correct.
just strikes me as just so like, how does anyone back this guy? I would hate him if I was a Muslim. I would absolutely despise that character. I despised Ali Dawa as well when I was a Muslim. I'm so glad I didn't know him back then, because I would have been fuming. But the way that he was talking to Little Devil Sophia, which just was just like everyone, we have like a little group chat going, um, and everyone was kind of saying, just block him, stop talking to him. And
No,
I think that Sophia, like, she takes a lot of example from me, and a lot of the time I tell people not to take example with me, because the way that I handle things is very bull in a china
combative.
shop. Like
Yeah,
I enjoy chaos. That's my it's like it's a curse and a blessing, because I really, really do enjoy it, but when other people try it, it doesn't really work out for them because they don't know how to handle it. And for
yeah,
me, my whole life has been chaos. I think I froze for a little bit there. My whole life has been chaos, so I know how to manage it really, really well. So for me, I can deal with that conversation and I can keep the same level of petty without letting it get to me. But with Sophia, because she had so many issues going on at the time, and I was completely aware of these issues, it's very, very
yeah,
difficult to like deal with all the shit that's going on. It's kind of like taking hard drugs. Like you can't really do them if you've got shit going on inside your head. You
yeah.
won't have a
You're
good time.
completely overwhelmed, and
Yeah.
you are completely overwhelmed. And
So,
yeah, okay, it does a lot of it hinges on your character and your nature. Like
mhm,
you said, you are a bull in a china shop, and if it isn't your nature, then
mhm.
I would say, I just block and move on. But if you have shit to say, you should say it,
Yeah,
regardless of
absolutely.
what people think.
But
And
also, I think that there is no shame in saying, you know what, I don't want to talk to this person anymore.
yeah, yeah,
There is no shame in not wanting to interact with, for lack of a better term, a bully, because that's how they behave. and that's how their entourage is as well. Like all their little minions and stands. They have this way of, they know how to get under people's skin, and as someone who's gotten under everyone in my life's skin, I know how that works. I'm very good at doing that. All of my friends, they have a love-hate relationship with me because they don't know what to expect sometimes. But I mean, that's a different subject for a different time.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, they definitely know where to hit you. Like Asadullah, the last time I had a conversation with him, and he hasn't spoken to me since, and I'm glad he hasn't spoken to me since, because I called him out on a lot of shit which he had a lot of apologetics for.
As usual.
He said, well, like
Oprah,
I
as usual.
pointed out, because I didn't initially realize that he was a convert, and his
Yeah.
name is Asadullah, and I was like, wait, he named himself Lion of God, like why? And then he like went on a long tirade about how his like teacher gave him that name, and I was like, can you imagine if people named me the Queen of Sheba and then I made that my legal name? Can you imagine the level of arrogance? Like it, he hasn't spoken to me since because like, he knows I'm a trifling hoe. But the last time I
And
spoke to him,
the kicker is they call you and they call ex-Muslim women attention seekers. That's the most
exactly,
hilarious part. Meanwhile,
exactly,
you throw a
the
tantrum when someone
man
treats
named
you.
himself Lion of God, bitch. Like, but the last time he spoke
Wow.
to me,
Okay.
constantly calling me a failure, calling me, I have underlying issues that I'm covering with Islam. I constantly blame things on Islam. And I very
Same.
rarely blame things that have happened in my life on Islam. Very rarely, because I don't
Yeah.
think that, ideas can only do so much to your life. You do invest them into your life. And I've always said, if I went back, I would not change my journey because I definitely think that it was a catalyst to who I am now. And I like who I am now. So,
You know,
and
I
I did
actually,
that every single fucking time he called me a failure. I constantly pointed out, that you're projecting your own insecurities because you won't stop saying it. Like you're constantly projecting that onto me because you do not have a response for what I'm telling you. He two things that he kept saying was that you're ignorant and uneducated,
yeah,
and he kept calling me a failure. And I said, you clearly have a fear of failure and appearing as someone who loses,
you,
even though there's
yeah,
no win or lose here. This is a public forum where people are talking. There
yeah. You
is
don't
no
fucking
win
get
or lose.
prizes.
There's exactly, like, you get some bragging rights for, oh, I really threw down that stranger online, whatever the hell, I don't know. He clearly has too much time on his hands. But the other thing also is that he's very, very, very insecure about being ignorant or appearing ignorant, which is all he
Yeah,
appears as when I read anything from him. Because he
yeah,
never addresses the point that I brought up. My initial tweets were all about how Islam has consistently treated women poorly, consistently
yeah.
through the ages. And he did not address any of it. He just fixated on the fact that instead of saying Yaqeen Institute, I said Al Yaqeen. That's what he fixated on. And it's
Yeah,
like,
that it's like the party trick. It's for one, you are assumed to be a failure or mediocre.
it's pure
It's always
deflection.
yeah, and it's always your negative experience, and it's always you being uneducated.
Mhm.
And I think what gets to me personally about him is that I triggered him because I acted him, I mentioned him and saying I just watched the secular jobs podcast, and I do think he's one of the most intellectually dishonest people, and
He
I
is.
mean that wholeheartedly
He
because
truly is.
he has fucking 18,000 PhDs, but he still can't answer a fucking question.
No.
He ducks and dives, and then he wants to say, oh, why, if you want to come, you are uneducated, why don't you come debate me? And I'm just
He
thinking, fool, I don't care. I actually don't
he
care. I don't
covers
want to
his
debate
own
you.
ignorance by calling other people ignorant. That's what he does.
Yeah,
Someone
yeah,
will ask him a question or someone will point something out to him and he'll immediately be like, oh, you're so dumb. Like that's his
yeah. He quite
whole,
literally insinuated that both Ali and Armin were idiots.
yeah.
And
And he
I'm just
hopes
like,
that that
why?
will carry, and all of his fucking minions and stands will back him, and they'll be like, "Yeah, you really got him," but he did nothing.
But for me personally, as a lover of free speech or
Mm.
as a lover of freedom of expression, I want them to to behave like complete idiots. I like that. I want them to express their own anger. I want them to vent.
Yeah,
You know, I think
absolutely. I think it's a good thing,
it's
but
their
I
right to
think
do
it's
so.
also important that we keep calling them out on their bullshit.
Absolutely. That was actually going to be my next point, in that
Mm.
we do not let it press.
I mean,
That's
it's
why.
like I've seen a
Yeah,
lot of people who'll be like, "Oh, you don't need to respond to that." Like they're clearly being an idiot. But the thing is that people will not see that because they're respected in some form or some vein, you know?
yeah,
So people will take that comment at face value. Like I think Farid, I don't know if you're aware of Farid, but he posted something ridiculous like ages ago about he was saying how, oh, if the parents consent to a child being married to an adult, then it's consent. And
it's
it's like
bullshit. That is bullshit.
it's ridiculous, but the thing is people who follow him and respect him and admire him will take that comment at face value unless he is called out on his bullshit.
Yeah,
So it's so important to, yes, while they are kind of outing themselves and they are blowing up their own spots, it's really really important also to continue addressing it, um regardless of the backlash. I mean, you can turn off conversations now on Twitter, it's easy.
yeah,
um but I think it's really, really important. And I also, for those of you who, again, may not be from a Muslim background who are like watching this or, you know, are with this through us, some of you have been completely consistent from the beginning. I would also encourage you to dissect their arguments as well. I think you might
yes,
find it a
yes.
humorous pastime. I know you really, really enjoy, breaking down the Christian stuff, but that is nothing compared to these guys. These guys are absolute jokes. You would have a riot.
It actually is a joke, because it, for me, and I do think it's more hilarious than anything else, that
Mm,
they think they have genuine influence. Whereas if they go to a place like Saudi, they'll be laughed out of the room with their
absolutely.
bullshit take. So, and then I remember asking, oh, Saudi Arabia are still killing apostates. What do you have to say about that? He's like, yeah, you just bring up Saudi Arabia. Why don't you? I'm like, motherfucker, that's the birthplace of Islam. For all
Yeah.
intents and purposes, you cannot throw that out the window.
I mean,
You,
as someone who grew up, not maybe not from childhood, but like from 11 onwards, I was listening to Arabic khutbahs, I was listening to Arabic fatwas, I was constantly, while I wasn't in Saudi, I was constantly hearing things coming out from Saudi. Some of
yeah.
these, I mean, fundamentalist Faye in the back gets very pressed sometimes. She's just like,
And
what
again, I
bullshit are
think
they
it's
talking? Why are they behaving like that? Like, it's just like the adab is so fucked. Like why?
yeah, yeah, and I think also it goes back to being a Sunni Salafi Muslim,
Mhm,
where it is a massive part of your identity,
mhm.
and it's more relevant to you than I think most it would be to most Muslims who practice another brand of Islam, whatever you want to call it. Um, but yeah, the way he invalidated that was just fucking mind blowing. And I always tell him that he's committing shirk himself.
Yeah.
It's like you press on about that, like, no, still shirk. No, you're still basically being a heretic.
Mhm.
What you are doing is you are twisting words and you are feeding it as gospel, and that's not okay. But if you want to believe it, you do you. But the minute you attack people, you expect the same treatment. It's fair game.
I remember when I there's a video up on Ali Dawa's channel where I'm talking to him. It's from last year in August, and there are so many comments underneath because at one point I called him out. I said like, "You shouldn't be backbiting people. You shouldn't be slandering people," because he
Haram, yeah.
he went off on one about apostate prophet. He was calling him a clown and a donkey and all of that stuff. And I was like, "You really shouldn't backbite. Like, I'm pretty sure that's haram." And
Yeah,
he got so pressed. He was like, "No, it's not backbiting. He's an enemy of Allah." And I was like, "So am I. Are you gonna backbite me?" Like, it's just not fair play. And so many people in the comments were like, is an ex-Muslim also correcting Ali Dawa on backbiting. Like, am I wrong though? I feel like
yeah, yeah.
I have a point.
And the thing is, like that whole, I think it's called Speaker's Corner, where
Mm,
he had something with Armin,
yeah.
and a lot of the times it's just a matter of who screams the loudest. It's like it's politicians who talk the biggest amount of shit, without actually giving
Mm.
you actual good policy, but you bite at that because
I
it fits your predispositions.
I will agree that in Speaker's Corner there is a lot of screaming, but I think he was actually caught off guard by the fact that I wasn't yelling at him. He actually, yeah, I did a reaction video, and he's still up on his channel if you want to go and see it. I think it's called
I
Slaves
will do
Dressed to
that. I will do
Impress
that.
or something. But I did a reaction video on my channel about it, and at one point he apologizes to me because he was getting too heated, and I'm just standing there like, yeah, I'm just here to talk, dude. I'm not here to argue with you. I'm just here to talk. I'm here to have a conversation. And that's how I like being with everybody. I don't want to start an argument, you know.
Yeah, no,
It's not my jam.
yeah,
I'll only start an argument if you're being like petty.
yeah. If
Um
you instigate it, then you know what,
yeah.
then you
Then
deserve it.
it's, all for one and one for all. It's a free for all. I'll take what I can take.
Yeah.
But if I'm just standing here wanting a conversation, he was like visibly becoming heated, and at one point he just stops himself and he says sorry, and he's like, I had a really heated discussion, I'm sorry. And then he just continues our discussion was actually quite, I wouldn't call it cordial, but it was a conversation. It wasn't a screaming match, which
Yeah.
I could appreciate. Like, it's the only thing that I can give him.
I just would like to add that I think these Dawa guys who go about their business like that are
Mm.
doing more harm to Islam image than it's Muslims. You know, they
It's That's not how Muslims see it. That's the thing.
you think so? You,
Yeah, like
yeah.
I've spoken to his groupies. I've spoken to like people who follow him on Twitter. Like, they are, the thing with their like minions and their groupies on their stands is that they're so enthralled by these people. Like, they almost worship these people. These people are like, you know how you like Ariana Grande, I like Rihanna. Like, that's what they are to them.
Yeah.
Like, these are the idols of these people, and they see like this yelling and screaming and this like roadman attitude as like a good thing. They're seeing like, oh yeah, they're doing the jihad, like the dawah jihad, and they're like being aggressive, and it's like good. But yeah, it doesn't look good to like the rest of the world, the rest of the sane world, where it's like, okay, well, it's just a bunch of guys being idiots. But to them and the people who idolize them and think that these are the people who are like spreading the message, they really do revere these people, which I think is dangerous.
Do you think it's the groups who do take them seriously? Do you think it's down to geography? Do you think it could be the same in somewhere like Iran, for example?
um
Or do you think there's a difference?
I definitely think it's more of a Western thing, and I think it's more of a young people thing. From what I've seen, like the crowds that he attracts, both of men and women, it's either like old grandmas who are just like in the background, just like shaking their fists and agreeing, or it's very, very young people, and converts who are enthralled by them and are like, this is an example that I should follow, which is just, it's just scary. Because I remember after I spoke to him, I spoke to a lot of people who were just standing around in the crowd, and the amount of them that just didn't want to associate with me. Like, there was one guy, I think his name is Mansoor. He was like talking Bangla, and I'm from Bangladesh, so I was like, "Oh, you're from Bangladesh? Like, where in Bangladesh are you from?" It's like the typical Bangladeshi question that every Bengali asks. And he was like, "It's not important," and he just walked off, and I was like,
The
I
fuck?
was just asking a question. It's just like the friendliest thing that every Bengali asks another Bengali, you know?
Yeah.
And I was just treating it like, yeah, I'm just having a laugh, I'm having a crack. That's all it is. But these people, the moment I kind of dethroned him because he was very taken aback by me, um, people just, it was like Red Sea. Nobody wanted to associate
Yeah.
with me. They're
Yeah.
like, I had the plague or something. It's
No,
ridiculous.
it's. I think a lot of it is also style over substance. If you
Mm.
actually dead serious about studying your own religion, you will start by going to these guys' channels. I mean, that you sort of follow if your friend tweets something and you're like, oh wait, this works. Let me check out their account, and like that's how you get your Islam. And I think a lot of people, and I'll go back to the whole feminist movement, is that a lot of information they get, and particularly Muslim feminists, is from social media. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I like, I remember when I was coming up, and one of my close friends was getting married, and I'm telling her like, do you know your rights? And as a Muslim woman, she's like, no. And I'm telling her, okay, look here, look here, look here, look here. If you want to go to an imam, go for it. And it's mind-boggling that sometimes you, who actually left the faith, care more about what they know. If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
the sometimes the level of ignorance astonishes me and also annoys me. I think it annoys me because I spent so much of my time on it. I think that's why it annoys me. But also it astonishes me because they will be completely unaware and they'll be like, "What are you talking about?" And I talk a lot about it at work because I can't hide it at work. People there know
Yeah,
who I am, and I'm very loud. And they're very accepting. We've had many cordial discussions about Islam, and we were talking about FGM. And one of Pakistani lady, and she's lovely, by the way. She was like, if you just want to come to my house, have some curry, it's all good, like I have nothing against you. So she's
no,
wonderful,
definitely.
she's a lovely woman. But she was having this discussion with me, and she was vehemently like disagreeing, like, no, FGM has nothing to do with Islam. And I was like, no, there are narrations in the hadith that are authentic, that allow it. And she was like, oh, send those to me. And I sent them to her, and she was in pure disbelief. And I was like, the reason why you might not have been exposed to it and it is because of the Hanafi
Yeah,
sect
yeah,
within the Asian subcontinent, where it's not something mandatory or recommended, it's just something that you can do.
yeah.
um
It's very different to
yeah.
what I think you and
um
I both grew up with.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, I never revered the kind of street dawah that exists in the West. My reverence was much more towards like Sheikh Ibn Baz, Sheikh Uthaymeen, Anwar al-Awlaki was like my favorite. He was a known terrorist. Like, I should not even be saying his name. He died in Yemen. All right, like I should not he was a terrible human being, but these were the people that I revered because I treated them as like, oh, these are
Yeah,
people who
same.
know what they're talking about, and they're like trying to follow this 7th century lifestyle. Like, for me, it's very much like it. I like find it distasteful, and I'm kind of glad for it as well because it's such a mockery of what those people, like the people that I used to revere, were like. It's such a mockery. Um, because even the way in which they speak, like the difference, like the way that
Yeah,
Sheikh Uthaymeen speaks, the way that Sheikh Anwar al-Awlaki, like half the preaching is done in the way that they speak and the way that they invite you into it, because the words that they use and the toning and everything, the way of their speech is just so mesmerizing and beautiful, and it like romanticizes everything for you. It's extremely dangerous. Don't like I really don't want to encourage anyone to go and watch it, but if you are, please do at your own risk, because I'm telling you that they have a way of like mincing words to make it make sense, like almost like, I don't know, like a politician would. Like, it's very, very
yeah,
snaky in one
yeah,
way, but the like this like our Asadullahs and our Ali Dawas and our Muhammad Hijabs, it's such a mockery of that, and it both
absolutely,
disappoints me.
absolutely.
It both disappoints me, and it also like makes me laugh because I'm not for
I
it
find it
anymore.
hilarious.
But also, like, I know what I was, infatuated with before, and there's just such a contrast with the style. There's such a contrast, and yeah, I don't know. I'm very messed up in here. Like, it's very. Whenever I come across stuff like that, I have to turn it off after a while because everything gets confused. Does that make sense?
But that's
I don't know if I'm
it,
making
it, it does. It's like I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I also just in general, I think the Arabic language, the people who are removed from it,
sense.
is something. incredible. You listen to Kirat, you you feel things. It's something that's calming, and just even hearing that, and a lot of times you don't understand what is actually being said. I know majority of my family are religious, but they don't understand what is actually being read, what is actually being
Yeah,
recited,
I
and
think that's
it's
definitely
gripping.
as well. I think that me knowing Arabic as a language really did help, you know. It really
Lucky
did
you.
help me. Yeah. But like I remember I could listen to those sheikhs for ages. I remember when Aulaki died, I cried like I lost someone I actually knew. I cried. Um, it was because I could listen to him endlessly. There was just such a fascination with the way that he, not just how he told stories, because that's what I used to be the most fascinated by, but also how he would like rally people, because he used to do a lot of like jihad speeches. And it was like a lot,
Um,
but but the way that he would use language, and not just Arabic, English as well, like the way he chose his words and he presented an argument was extremely well done. There's something very, very mesmerizing and respectable about that. There's nothing respectable about these people in Dawa, and I'm kind
no,
of glad
they
for it.
there's no charisma. There's no charm.
No, there's
It's a
no
whole
charm.
lot of shit.
That's what it is. There's like no charm to them. You just want to like bin them with every other roadman.
I do think like I believe the way he goes about it is
Mhm.
he's a lot more human also.
I do
He
like. I do
embraces.
prefer Abu Laith.
Yeah, look, I do think that he is completely wrong. Again, it
Mhm.
goes back to the reform topic, which I hate personally.
But I like how he
But
talks.
yeah, yeah, it's calm, it's
It's humble.
composed,
I
it's
think that's
humble.
I think that's what it is. It's like they have humility, and that's what I appreciate.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
be as
absolutely
wrong as you
humility.
like, but don't be arrogant.
Yeah,
Don't act
don't
like you
come
know
across as a
everything.
petulant little c word.
Child, it's childish. But we've been going on for almost an hour and a half. I don't
Yeah,
want to keep you for very much longer. We don't have any other questions. I think everybody's just been happy listening to us banter, which is nice. Is there any final comments that you would like to say? Is there anything you want to shill or promote? Just final words before we close out.
so my final words, for one, it's just a massive thank you to the community. I think for supporting our initiative. It came out of nowhere. It's not something that we anticipated. It felt surreal at times. It felt surreal to me, and I do think that now is when the actual hard work begins. Because yes, it's easy to just post something, and by Wednesday it's already irrelevant.
Mm,
And I do think now is where you actually build and where you actually go out and ask people to tell them your story. And I do think that people who can help us can do so
mhm,
by directing women to us. If you know someone who is outspoken, if you know someone who has doubts, if you know someone who wants to share their side of the story, then please do, if you are listening, just tell them to tag Atheist Muslim South Africa. I don't know if you will link the actual Twitter handle. We are on Facebook as well. So
mhm.
please do get in touch with us. We would love to actually have you join the campaign. We would love to have your voices. I know Sarah gave me a testimony. Um, Mumsivids mentioned that she wants to do a video. So I do think that this is a positive step, and I want to normalize that it is not a choice.
I had a video idea because I've kind of done my journey with hijab. I've already done it. But I had a video idea that's slightly less serious. Like I wanted to do a humorous kind of take where, I've seen like videos in the beauty community where they did like their makeup in high school. And I kind of wanted to do that, but with my hijab. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
okay.
Like what I used to look like as a high schooler. Um, and just treat it lightly and humorously, but also address something really, really important. Um, just because like I'm trying to keep everything light, and we're in a bad time right now, so I don't want to keep it serious all the time.
There's
Um,
that trend. I don't know if you've seen it. Where I think it's a TikTok trend. You know, with the makeup brush. I think it's called the Don't Rush
yeah, Zara
challenge.
brought it to me. We're planning something, so look out for that on Twitter.
Ah, perfect. Please tag me so I can
Yeah,
assist you.
we
Please
will.
tag us.
I'll let her know because I think we should tag it. I think like from now on, all of my thirst traps will be tagged with those tags. Um, I mean, it's
Yeah,
great promotion. They get a lot of likes, so why not? Um, but it's
yeah.
been wonderful having you, and I'm sure everyone's enjoyed listening to you. For those of you who are unaware of what the is it the former Muslims or the cultural Muslims of South Africa? I've forgotten.
Uh, it's taken from Ali Rizvi's book. It's Atheist Muslims of South Africa.
Atheist Muslims of South Africa. It is at ex_Africa. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's the
At
one. And
ex_Africa.
and
Um,
the Facebook handle is at exmza.
okay. So I'll see if the moderators can put that in. But it's been wonderful having you. It's been an enlightening discussion, and I would really, really, really encourage those of you who are not who do not have a Muslim background, please, please, please also support this cause. Please, please, please add your voices to this discussion. It is so important for just having a larger community to back this, because ex-Muslims are pretty scarce. There's not a lot of us
Yeah,
that are open and out there because it's so hard to leave. And don't forget that there are countries in the world like Iran, like Saudi Arabia, where hijab is something that is enforced. Women have to wear it by law. And there is such a bigger movement for us to attend to. Currently, there are 12 feminists in Saudi Arabia who are Muslims who are rotting in prison, who are being tortured and raped and abused in prison. We have Iran, where women are protesting every Wednesday by by taking their hijabs off. Probably not. I don't know what the situation is now with the virus situation, but they were protesting every single Wednesday and getting beaten and abused and imprisoned, sometimes even killed for it. We still have stonings. We have mass shamings. This is something that is not just isolated to, oh, it's a piece of cloth and we're in the West
yeah.
and we have the free choice to do that. It is a serious issue elsewhere. So I would really, really encourage that everyone take it up within the skeptic community. If you feel strongly about this, do not be afraid to voice your opinion. It really doesn't matter if you get called Islamophobic. Us from Muslim backgrounds get called Islamophobic. I've done a video on it. Feel free to link them that and tell them to shut up. I've made it very clear what my stance is on that. But yes, thank you for joining us. We will be logging off. And thank
I
you.
just want to add one
Sure,
more thing.
go ahead.
To everyone who is listening, it's hashtag it is not a choice.
Yeah.
So please just spam that. I don't care. Your likes and retweets are free. It doesn't cost anything. So please do try and expose this movement and do your best to help. You are in a place of
Especially now.
privilege.
You'll have no excuses. Everybody's stuck at home. Do some work.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
so yeah, please do use the hashtags. Please do share your thoughts, opinions, make creative videos. If you want me on a live stream, you want Zara on a live stream, hit us up. We're all stuck at home, endless amounts of time, oodles of it. We will. This is not just like a promotion thing. It is something that we feel really, really strongly about, and it is also, a personal experience that we can share. So, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for hearing us, and thank you, for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank all of you. We are truly humbled at the reception and at the support. And it's just the start, hopefully.
All right. See you later, guys. Bye.